everyone, today I'm going to be doing a review on Frank Darabont's 2007 movie The Mist. Now, I was meant to be doing a video this week ranking all of the 2022 films that I saw, but because my computer's being a little bitch, I'm not able to export things. It just keeps blacking out and overheating and dying. But I've noticed that it's been exporting shorter videos, so I'm just going to do a few reviews until I get my computer fixed. So I'm going to go with a very simplistic structure today. I'm just going to be going basically positives, mixed, and negatives. I will be talking about spoilers in this review because I feel like it's kind of necessary for me to. So if you don't want to be spoiled, straight up, I'll just say I think this movie's worth a watch. So let's get into it now. So starting off with the positives, I have to say Marcia Gay Harden's performance is the standout of this film. Her character is what I'm going to basically say holds this film together. You get a bad actor for her when the town and all the people in the supermarket start turning and kind of listening to her and succumbing to her, I don't even know what to say, like wisdom, kind of wisdom, I guess. If you don't have a convincing actor to do that, the town's turn and their arc is just going to be stupid. You're just going to be like, why are they listening to that bitch? But when you have someone as convincing as her, it becomes a lot more realistic and it feels actually threatening. She's one of the best horror villains that I think I've ever seen, basically, and she just really sells it. I also think most of the other actors in this movie are decent. I think Thomas Jane's good. I think it's Jeffrey DeMunn, he was good. Frances Sternhagen is fantastic. I like Toby Jones as Ollie. So yeah, most actors in this do their job. I find the character work in this movie to be very fascinating. I think it's kind of what holds the movie together. I think the character of Jim is really interesting. I think the character of Brent Norton is interesting. I think all the characters in this movie are interesting in their own rights. I don't think there's any character, at least for me, that stands out as being overly unrealistic or anything like that. There's no one that feels like a caricature or like, a cartoon character. They all feel like, the very, very believable human reactions to a situation like this. Some go into denial, some believe that, it's the wrath of God and stuff like that. I find it all really, really interesting. This movie also has some genuinely creepy scenes as well. The scene when they're going over to the pharmacy and they find the guy the guy from Arrowhead Project, strung up in the cobwebs, and his guts burst open full of spider eggs that they'd been laying inside him. I find that horrifying. I think that as soon as the siren goes off in the town near the start of the movie, you're just like, oh shit, like it's a real sinking feeling. And overall, I think that this movie definitely does its job at being creepy. I also like the interesting concept about other worlds. I don't think it was executed with as much subtlety as I would have liked as the way it is in the book. They kind of just hint that there's this Arrowhead Project and, being Stephen King multiverse, they, hint that maybe they've tried to break open a door to another world, possibly, and they've gone Todash instead. But I do really like the concepts. I find it fascinating. It makes it a lot more grand, and I like the fact that the creatures aren't necessarily monsters per se. They're creatures from another dimension trying to survive in our world. And I find that really fascinating. And overall, it's just a bizarre and unique setting. Like a supermarket, not really a place that you see very often. And it's a memorable setting too. So yeah. Now moving on to the mixed aspects, I only have one mixed aspect here, and that is the ending. Part of me likes it because it really reinforces the main theme of the movie, which is never give up hope. It reinforces it in a very nasty way, but it kind of reinforces it at the same time. But also, on the other hand, it kind of goes against it because the whole movie, David and his kids and the other guys, they're all the guys end up in the car with them, like Toby and shit like that, even though he doesn't end up in the car, but they try to escape. That group of people, their whole thing of the movie is to never give up hope. And it just seems a little weird to me that as soon as their car breaks down, they just completely change their tune and just don't even try, when the whole point if the movie was to Never Give Up Hope. I find it just a little bit too far for me in some regards, and I do think that overall it was just kind of an ending that was a little bit tacked on, because the movie overall isn't one of the most memorable movies. It's kind of just a standard monster flick with some, ethical debates, which, you see in a lot of zombie movies. So yeah, the ending, it feels a little bit tacked on, a little bit, like it's iconic for the movie, but it feels like, it doesn't really work with the themes of the movie. It just seems a little bit far-fetched, a little bit too trying to make a stamp and an imprint on the horror genre, which it has done, but I'm not too sure on it. Moving on to the negatives now, and first of all, my main negative with this movie has to be the CGI. When you see the CGI mist rolling in over the lake, it looks awful. When you see the mist rolling in over the supermarket, it looks awful. The mist looks fine, like once it's all surrounding them, it looks fine then. But when it's rolling in, it looks terrible, and also the CGI monsters, they're shocking. When they're obscured in the mist, though, sometimes when they are, it looks fine. But when the tentacles are coming under the garage door, when one of the tentacles picks up the dog bag and squashes it, it's a disaster. When the spiders are throwing their cobwebs, it looks absolutely ridiculous. And overall, most of the monsters, when they're flying around inside the supermarket, absolute disaster. The practical monsters, like when the severed tentacle is on the ground, that looks really good, but the CGI in this movie is awful. I do think that because the movie was intended to be in black and white, maybe they didn't give as much thought to the CGI, because they were then, told, no, this movie has to be in colour. Maybe it'll look better if I watched it in black and white, but as it stands right now, the CGI in this movie is an absolute disaster. I'm also not a fan of the camera work in this movie. Both the camera work and the colour grading, I think it just looks really cheap. I hate how handheld it is. It feels kind of like a found footage movie, which I, at the best of times, hate. And overall, I just don't like how it's so unsteady. Like, but it's not done in the creative way. Like, someone will be talking and it'll just zoom in and then back out. It doesn't work for me. And I know some people like it. It is definitely unique. But for me, I think it's terrible. Also, the pacing of this movie is just shocking. Maybe this is just because I really, really like the novella, but basically, the first act of the novella in the movie is chopped down. In the second act of the novella in the movie is really stretched out, which I don't understand. I wish the setup had been a little bit more in-depth, and I wish the part when they were just sitting in the supermarket when nothing's happening in the middle, I wish that was chopped down a little bit. This movie is like 2 hours and 10 minutes. It does not need to be that long. So overall, I think that this is I think it's a good movie. I think if you can look past the CGI, which is something that, at least for me, I'm normally good at looking past CGI. Like, the original Hellraiser, when it goes for the actual computer-generated special effects in that, it is a disaster, but I can look past it. But even this movie, it's just a bit too prevalent for me to ignore. I do like the movie overall. I'm going to give The Mist 3 stars. Definitely check it out if you're a horror fan. And I think it's good, but to be perfectly honest, it's just the kind of movie that works better on paper than on screen. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.